What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, again, it feels like we've never been more positive doing Guarani. I mean, we're always trying to be positive on this podcast for the 4 years that we've done it, almost to be 5 years. But man, it feels like this Paraguay national team is just continuing to steal our hearts because we obviously are coming off a really great international break, taken against Chile and Colombia. We'll talk about what happened there and whether or not we should get ready to figure out and analyzing all the rest of the world opponents that we might face, because I feel like we're in the World Cup, we're right there. It feels like such a really good energy. I was fortunate enough to be in Paraguay last week, as I mentioned beforehand. I was able to be with Fede, of course, at the stadium, the Defensores del Chaco, be with so many people. Also, shout out to Florencio Cáceres, who I was able to meet, and I'll talk about her in a bit afterwards. But yeah, it feels like it's been such a positive week, coming off of, 8 days since the first game against Chile and then the game against Peru, against Colombia back on Tuesday. Feels like this energy that we've seen from Gustavo Alfaro's team, from the players, from the fans and everything that you've seen. It feels very much like I've said beforehand, a wave that just continues to rise up, and that we're continuing going. We're not crashing down. We're not like the surfboards that just won't go crash down when they go out. We're just continuing to ride with it. 8 games unbeaten, Fed. I mean, I'll go to you first because one, it was really great to see you. It was really great to be there at the Defensores del Chaco, spend some time with you, and obviously be there at a big game against Chile in the World Cup qualifiers. But I've had the experience of being in there during the whole time. Well, first of all, pregame, being there in the press conference with Gustavo Alfaro, and obviously afterwards with the players, and for you as well, you stayed put in Paraguay afterwards when I left and came back to the States during the Colombia game. But you just felt like this energy just it stayed put. It just stayed put. And there is that belief that people, and you're even seeing it from the US Embassy on their social medias. Paraguay are going to go to the 2026 World Cup, their first World Cup in 16 years.
The party's just not gonna end, right? Hey guys, it's nice to be back with you, Roberto. Nice to see Rap there, as always, here at Guarani Vision. It's almost time, right? I was just listening to you. We gotta get that champagne ready. We gotta get that wine ready. You know, that one that's been holding on and just been waiting there about 15 years, because we're almost there, guys. It's crazy to think about it. It's not just about the spot that opened up in the qualifiers. It's about Paraguay showing up, and I even got expectations with this team going forward to the World Cup. I mean, it's crazy to talk about that situation as we're sitting in a pretty good spot right now after another huge combo from these guys, Chile, Colombia, the last victims of the Alfaro effect, the Alfaro machinery. This unstoppable team that's always picking up points at home, winning, and then picking also at least a tie away, and they did it again, right? I almost forgot lately what it feels to lose. At a certain point, it was the other way around. We didn't know what it was like to win, and Alfaro has just brought it all. Things have turned around, and you could feel that, Roberto, in the atmosphere. I know you felt it when you were here. It was even better that game against Chile because I got the chance to kick it with you in the preview. See everybody that was hanging out also in Defensores del Chaco, and wow, it was a great atmosphere. I got to tell you, Raf, Roberto was going crazy after the game. He was jumping up and down like he was a 5-year-old. I mean, and he wasn't the only one. Everybody was in that kind of mood, right? I mean, it's great to feel that. You're seeing a lot of kids, a lot of new generations also going through it for the first time. So it's beautiful, Roberto. I can't believe it. We're so close. We're almost there.
We're almost there. We're almost there. And, Ralph, I feel like even for a lot of these players that I feel like, the reputations for them have always been kind of debated. And I think a lot of players, and we'll talk about one in particular when we talk about the game against Colombia, you feel as if though the reputation for some of these players will be instantly immortalized, I'd say, because, I think these games, usually I think when we come from a country like Paraguay that is really much expectant a lot of their players, and obviously it's great to see them perform for their clubs and their teams or whatever country in the world, but I think if you really show it out for the national team, I think it kind of changes the perception a bit. That there could be this sense of like, maybe they don't care enough, or maybe he's too into himself. But when he puts on the Roja, it's like, boom, he instantly becomes one of us. He's a fan and also a great player. So it's been great to see. Well, thankfully when I was there as well, we also got to see some Apertura action. I was fortunate enough to go to the Cedro game against Emiliano. They won 2-0. So it saw that the Apertura is still continuing. Obviously, Intermedia is coming up as well. It's coming soon. There's obviously the Copa Libertadores draw that happened also that week of the qualifiers. So we get to see which of the we'll talk about the three Paraguayan teams and their opponents and their kind of odds with this draw. Yeah, it's been a crazy week for such an international break. It really wasn't an international break. It just happened so many things at the same time.
Yeah, so much going on at the same time. I mean, for sure, all the headlines are with Paraguay. I'm guessing the Cerro Emiliano game didn't have the same kind of attendance numbers because everybody's really focused on the Albiroca. And I think one of the cool things I saw with there's so much content coming out from these games was an interview with a kid where, they do that trend at the moment where they put two players against each other and you choose, and they're doing like Almiron against Haaland, and the kid's choosing Almiron, and then, Enciso against Mbappe, and they're choosing Enciso. I mean, these kids now have people to identify with and a team to kind of support, whereas before they didn't have that because, like Fede was saying, we forgot how it was to win, and now we're forgetting how it is to lose. So I think that's an amazing thing because, well, let's assume we'll go to the World Cup, but whatever happens in the World Cup, I think you've built that already with this team and with a lot of these players. And for some of them, we're just talking off air before we started. For some of them, it's the revenge mission because they were involved in the Russia 2018 campaign when Paraguay really should have qualified and messed up at home to Venezuela on the final day. It looks like the way things are going, there will be much larger margin of error that I don't think we're going to come down to that kind of situation. But I think for those players too, this is almost a chance to rewrite their legacy with the Albiroja. So I think that's so exciting. And then you said about everything else going on. Yeah, I mean, even Paraguay even beat Brazil in the beach soccer last week. I mean, the girls are in the semifinal, or were in the semifinal, I think, of the futsal in the Copa America. The under-17s were winning, which we're going to talk about soon. I mean, everything seems to be coming together at the moment for Paraguayan football. And I guess the next step and the next test before we get to June and Uruguay and Brazil is the Copa Libertadores, where we can see the Paraguayan clubs can try and show how they're doing in this competition, especially against Brazil. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but there's a lot going on between Paraguay and Brazil right now. There's I would say almost been like dragging along, and yesterday was another kind of flashpoint with Alejandro Dominguez in CONMEBOL. So there's just so much going on there, and Paraguay is really trying to put its best face forward, I guess, in terms of doing things on the pitch and starting to win some games. And they're one game away, by the way, that 8-game unbeaten run. They're one game away from their record of 9, which I think is the 98 team. So they're going right back to those guys who started this whole golden generation all those years ago.
Yeah, it feels like, you're turning back the clock. And, like you said as well, I feel like there was a lot going on. And yeah, I feel like that Paraguay Brazil debate's not going away anytime soon. I mean, it's kind of just, the flames have been reignited. And, I think obviously the fact that the Paraguayan teams are going to play Brazilian teams in the Libertadores, and then of course that game in Brazil in June, that could indeed secure officially qualification for the World Cup. It just feels like it's going to be an ongoing debate for the next 2 months, 3 months right now. So, yeah, it's one to look out for, and we'll always talk about it here on Guarani Vision. So definitely keep an eye on that. So yeah, let's go into what we saw in Defensores del Chaco first on Thursday. Me and Fede, of course, were fortunate enough to be there. Packed crowd. We kind of felt the energy beforehand. We were outside the stadium, and it felt like it was a really good party mood. Like everyone was really expectant, especially the fact that, Paraguay was coming back after a while, and it was the first game in a couple months since the 2-2 draw against Bolivia away, so the fact that you're able to see so many people there at the stadium at the Defensores. And, obviously I think the game against Chile felt like, this was a game that you had to win. Like it was the obligation, more so from what the circumstances that had gone on. If Paraguay were in a lower position or whatever, it just felt like the Chile side, who right now are rock bottom in the qualifiers, you felt like, yeah, you couldn't slip this away, especially since Chile in recent times had gotten our numbers. So yeah, we look at this game. It was a really tight game, Fed. From the get-go. I think obviously, like you said, I think Paraguay really came in with a very offensive lineup. You had Ramon Sosa and Almiron on the flanks. Enciso and Sanabria on the attack. No Diego Gomez, so you had Cubas and Bobadilla actually playing in that midfield. No Gustavo Gomez, meant that Balbuena was coming in with Omar Alderete, and then the fullbacks, of course, Junior Alonso and Juan Cáceres with Gatito in goal. But it was a really stressful game, actually, when you think about it. Looking back and seeing some of the highlights, I thought Chile was really going for it, really thought that they were going to maybe snatch something away. And we'll talk about the goal that we saw from a bit when I talked to Ralph, but I felt like from the start, it felt like Paraguay, like they wanted to go for it, and you saw that with various attempts, I think from Ramon Sosa, from Almiron, even from Enciso. You felt like something was gonna happen, but maybe it felt like it was a bit slowed down in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? The strikers didn't stand out in this game, right? None of the guys that could have scored for us, and the goal came from a set piece, and we kind of alluded that situation that it could happen in a game like this because Chile knew that this was something that they weren't going to be able to control, and they really struggled in that sense in every corner and every free kick, and Paraguay was really ready for that situation. You saw that Alfaro got to work on that, and that's something that we were not good at last qualifiers around. So it was great to see that show up in this game. It's great to see that going forward because I'm one of the guys that think that you can go to a World Cup and you can maybe not have much football, you can maybe not be such a strong team, but if you have set piece goals, you can do something in football nowadays in modern football. So I'm with that. I'm totally with that. I think you need to work on that, especially when you have huge guys in defense like we do. Balbuena, Alderete, Gustavo Gomez that's always scoring in Palmeiras also. So Junior Alonso, who also chipped in against Colombia. So I've been kind of waiting for that. And it's great to see that from our coach now putting that into this team. That's the good thing also about every single game of this eight unstoppable streak, that you're seeing every game something new in the team because you're pretty much playing with the same team also, so you're building stuff in there, and that's beautiful. I thought Matias Galarza should have started this game though in the midfield. I thought Ramon Sosa kind of struggled in that sense. He took him out of the game at halftime. He's always changing up when he needs to, and I kind of love that also from Alfaro, right? I mean, when he sees that something isn't working out, he changes it. But from this game in particular, I would say, the aggressiveness. I mean, this team in that midfield, I mean, they weren't letting Chile do absolutely anything. Chile came out without Alexis Sanchez. They lost him right before this game. He would have been very important in the attack for them, but they didn't have much to go against our huge defense. And I was so happy to see some players have their moment, like Omar Alderete especially. And then in the second half, Matias Galarza showing what he can do in that midfield and finally convincing Alfaro. He then put him on against Colombia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Omar Alderete, he got the goal. I'm not gonna tell about it. I'd rather Ralph do it actually, because it was a great goal. But you need to tell all of us, how on earth did that happen? Because it looked like a really good free kick, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes apparently.
You saw it coming, Ralph.
Yeah, right. Well, I saw it coming in terms of I thought he might score from a set piece, but I didn't think the way it was such an elaborate routine. And I honestly cannot believe that in the 2 training sessions they had, they were able to prepare all of this. I'm sure Alfaro had been sending them notes. They've been going through this, maybe the previous qualifiers, but they'd only just brought it out now because it was incredible everything that goes on. So you have Almiron and Enciso over the ball, right? Almiron looks like he's going to take it. He makes a signal with the ears, and then he moves away, and Enciso goes to take it. And suddenly you see Enciso, what I thought, I'm like, what has he done? He's like just overhit this pass. It's gone over everybody. But the signal with the ears was, of course, to Juan Cáceres, who's got those big ears that they fondly call him Nambilon, which Nambi is ears in Guarani. And he arrives, no one's ready for him. No one's been marking him. He arrives with such kind of momentum that he's always going to win the header. But it's really interesting that he's not trying to head to goal, right? He heads across goal. And then you have Tony Sanabria flick on the ball and Alderete turns it in. But the amazing thing about Tony Sanabria was he was on the floor. So when you go back and watch the replay, Sanabria, to lose his marker, almost like dives in the box, but he doesn't appeal for a penalty. Instead, he gets up, by then the markers like lost him because thought, okay, this guy's not going to be in the situation, and he wins the flick on Alderete. So I mean, the whole move is so well crafted. And it wasn't even the first time in the game we saw something like that, right? The whole game, Paraguay were trying these different kind of short routines from corners. They had one very similar in the first half where I remember Encisa squared it to Cáceres, because Cáceres was always like the free player, assuming he was just going to be marking for a counter attack, not participating. And so I mean, it was just so well thought out, and Chile had no answer. And for Chile, maybe the worst thing for them was the man that played Alderete onside was, of course, Arturo Vidal. And Vidal had a really bad game, I thought. I mean, he's back at Colo-Colo. He's not the player he once was. He wanted to dominate like he used to, because he's been to Asuncion and dominated games, and he just couldn't. I mean, there's an incident in the very first moments where he tries to like stroke Enciso's chin almost to intimidate him, and Alderete comes in, like slaps the hand down, and that was actually the only foul he committed all game, was in the 3rd minute against Almiron, and then he was quiet. Like Fede was saying, I mean, Paraguay's aggressiveness in midfield just kind of dominated the match, and you never really thought Chile would score. I think the issue was more, would Paraguay get the goal? And through that amazing set piece routine, they did.
They absolutely did, and they showed the love for Arturo Vidal, didn't they, Fede? I'm sure they showed really great love for him when he was subbed out, and then doing that really cool remark of the number 2 to the crest of the Copa America.
Yeah, I don't know if people actually got that right away, but when you get a player making signals at the crowd, people are gonna go at you, and they really showed it at him. And he's always been that kind of player. When he comes to play with his national team, he likes to represent it. And then after the game, I went to talk to him. I even got a picture with him because I've always loved him as a player, and he was very respectful. Even though they knew that they're pretty much out of the next World Cup, they know that they don't have enough. They haven't been able to have players like we do nowadays in Europe playing at a high level, and they have not done well with their coach either, Gareca. Ever since he took on this team, they have just not gotten the results. I wanted to ask you though, Roberto, which players kind of impressed you there? Because it's one thing to watch it on TV, it's another thing to watch them there compete for a spot, especially as of right now. Because I think we pretty much have a roster built. You have a starting team that's pretty much working. You're just moving 1 or 2 pieces game by game. So I want to ask you, which players impressed you? For me, I take Andres Cubas out of this team, and I don't know what happens to that midfield. I don't know if we have another Andres Cubas. But for you, which player impressed you?
Oh, I have to agree. I think it's Andres Cubas. Like, you could talk about the flairness of, someone like Enciso, and, he was obviously very much impactful. We'll talk about the game against Colombia in a bit, but, he was someone that I really enjoyed. But Andres Cubas, I felt like he was that motor that really charged forward and, got to attack. And I felt like, yeah, without him, he's a completely different, it's a completely different team. I felt like he's someone that has the ability to always, pick up the ball, recover the ball, pass it and play it out to one of the attackers or just find a way. And the fact that he's someone that is so short, he was like 5'6" or 5'7", so he's someone that is that really that big motor horse. I mean, I compare it to someone like N'Golo Kante, for example, a very short but hardworking midfielder that is able to be kind of the engine of the team. And I just feel like, for me, ever since Alfaro, even beforehand, for a long time, I think he's one of the most important players on this Paraguay team. Even in, when Paraguay weren't doing so well in the previous qualifiers or in the Copa America or whatever, I just felt like he always showed up. And, Ralph, I'm sure you'll agree with me as well. I feel like, honestly, getting Andres Cuba's Paraguayan passport and him joining this national team was probably one of the better decisions the APF have done in the last few years.
Yeah, right. Identifying somebody like that who for whatever reason is overlooked in Argentina. I mean, Argentina have an amazing midfield, of course, but he's such an important player. And I think the other one is Diego Gomez, who was, of course, suspended for that Chile game. And I think you touched on it, Fede, like Galarza almost fills in some of the gap, but not all of it. You almost need 2 players to cover Diego Gomez. So they tried Bobadilla in the first half, and Bobadilla was really good on the ball, but he wasn't winning any of the battles, the kind of 50-50s. So Galarza can do a bit of both. But then we'll talk about the Colombia game. When you see Diego Gomez, he's doing all of that in one. So what 2 players do for Paraguay, he's basically able to do that. So what we saw in the Chile game was much more work from Miguel Almiron, right, in terms of defensively. And I think Miguel Almiron, for me, has been one of the best players in the Alfaro era in the terms of the sacrifices he's made, because he's the number 10 still. Does he still wear the 10? I'm pretty sure, right? He wears a 10. He's not playing like the 10. I mean, that's Enciso. Enciso now is having all the freedom and doing that kind of thing. And so Almiron's had to accept that he's not able to be kind of the number one attacking or creative threat, but he's still doing a great job and putting in, I mean, so much. I was just thinking he played 90 minutes against Messi like 3 days before that game or 4 days before that Chile game on that horrible artificial turf that anybody that plays on that, that kind of saps more out of you because it impacts on your knees and ankles. And so then he has to do those 90 minutes. And I guess he didn't say anything to his coach there that he didn't want to play the full game. And then he goes to Paraguay and has to do not just play the game, but kind of play that defensive role, covering a lot of space because Diego Gomez isn't there. I mean, that was a really good performance as well. So I don't think we shouldn't overlook Almiron now that he doesn't score many, he doesn't assist many. His role's kind of changed, but he's been doing so much for the team.
But he was very impactful in the Colombia game. We'll switch gears now because obviously we go into the Colombia game, and Colombia were under pressure in this one, Fede. Actually, they were really under pressure. They had just lost their game against Brazil on the literally the same day as well in the last minute, and you kind of felt that it was the best opportunity possible for Paraguay to get something there. That being said, it was also the worst possible start because we'll talk about the two goals that they conceded early on in the first minute from Luis Diaz, a remarkable player, a really good individual performance on that end to score, and then the second goal from John Duran, Luis Diaz, of course, playing a part in the assist. It was the worst possible start for Alfaro, for Paraguay, conceding two goals in 15 minutes, and you felt, well, maybe for some, they felt like, okay, this is it, like the unbeaten streak was going to end, which, it was possible because of how well Colombia are. They have really good individual players and they had good individual talent and whatnot. But, talking for the two goals, firstly, I think it was really bad marking, I'd say, from Valbuena. He wasn't able to get Luis Diaz to stop him. I think he got crossed over, actually. So, yeah, really bad start on that end, at least.
I think actually a lot of people missed those first goals, right? It was kind of that start where you're just getting ready for the game. You're just sitting down on the couch and you're looking at the TV and you're saying, "Oh my God, they already scored!" It happened to a lot of people, I believe, that night. And what a crazy beginning! I mean, you can set up a game, you can get the strategy ready, and then these kind of things happen. And it was kind of that game also. So I think it was a remarkable game from Paraguay, especially because of what they did, coming back, picking up their stuff, showing it just one more time because they've done it before. I mean, we've seen this team down and we've seen them pick it up. And that's happened with Alfaro. That didn't happen before. So I got to give it to the coach also because he had to change his striker, going with Gabriel Avalos, who already had minutes against Chile, but he was totally a different player out there. You were going to go for the physical football. You were going to go for the long balls maybe. And he had his opportunities in the first half after, obviously, Colombia scored right away. What I loved is that, that new midfield, because we had never seen them play together. I mean, Diego Gomez, Matias Galares, Alcubas, and Almiron doing the hard work. They really took over against the midfield that knows exactly how to play. They've been doing it for a very long time. James did not have a good game. I believe, Colombia, just like you said, they were under pressure and they have not been their best version ever since that Copa America final. And we really took the ropes on this game. I loved what I saw that first half. I believe we deserved that goal even before it came through with Junior Alonso. Another set piece that you saw just came right out of the lab. They really worked on that situation. And on the second half, just a whole different chapter for Julio Cesar, right? I mean, you got to give it to this guy. I was rooting for him in this combo. I wanted him to have a moment, but what a moment. What a strike. It took us back to that goal against Manchester City. I mean, everybody was having flashbacks of that situation when he was at his best, probably. And to see him do it at the international level, to see it To see him do it in an away game against Colombia, to tie it up, to give us another point. It felt like a win, Roberto. And for Colombia, it felt like a loss. So it felt beautiful after those 90 minutes, especially after the way it started. It started like a nightmare.
It was a nightmare start because it was the player who you thought would do the damage, Luis Diaz, and it was the way you knew you were going to expose yourself on the counter attack, setting up the way they did. So that midfield was very. It had a lot of legs in it, but it has to like press because Galasa, Gomez, and Cubas, what they're going to do, they're going to press Almiron as well. So that's fine, but then there's always the missed kind of a missed tackle or the wrong trigger on the press, and then suddenly you could be out of sync. And you saw how good Luis Diaz is, that he can punish you. You mentioned, Roberto, that Balbuena gets crossed over. It's true, but it's actually Diego Gomez who misses a tackle, and I think that sets him off. Like, because Gomez was maybe a little bit rusty because he didn't play in that last game. Suddenly they were just a little bit out of sync, and yeah, Balbuena tries to cover, Cáceres does, and they're all leaving Luis Diaz free, like the one guy you don't want to. And it was interesting that the way Paraguay started the Colombia game is the same way they started the Chile game. The difference being the opponent, right? They didn't have Alexis Sanchez. They didn't have Vargas. Doesn't have the pace he used to, so they couldn't do anything on the counter. Because if you remember, straight after the goal, Paraguay actually have like 3 shots in the box where they could have scored, right? I think Enciso has one blocked, Galasa has one blocked. I mean, Paraguay are all over. They're very attacking. As soon as the first goal went in, they didn't mind. Second goal goes in, and then you're worried because you're like, okay, I mean, this could get like the Uruguay, Paraguay 6-0 in the under-20s, right? Because that is a similar style now. We're seeing these two teams really trying to go head to head. And so I wonder what changes. I mean, I think one thing that changes is someone like Diego Gomez does start to take over. And you mentioned James. James, I was just checking because I wanted to check it. His passing accuracy, he only missed one pass, but he just didn't have an effect on the game, right? So I'm pretty sure most of those passes went sideways or backwards. And you just felt like the difference to the Copa America game where James destroyed Paraguay, if you remember, is the midfield is totally different. You had very slow midfielders like Ernesto Caballero, you have Villasanti, who on his mobile. And then here, because you had the guys with the legs and with the pressing, he just didn't have the same effect. And then I suppose, okay, there's some of that's a bit of the quality, but then there's the resilience. This was actually of the last 5 games. In 4 of the last 5 games, Paraguay have conceded the first goal. And they've come back. And they came back against Bolivia late on. And they came back here late on. So there's also that mental side, psychological side. There's this resilience that they've been able to build up, which I think Fede put the finger on it when Alfaro was first coached, right? You mentioned about how he works with the sports psychologist, and that just you can't discount that has to have had a big effect. And Alfaro himself, I'm sure, because you see how he speaks. He said before the game to them, he said, remember when you were kids and you didn't have enough money to get shoes, your parents found it hard to make ends meet, so you could actually go to training, and all of them have that kind of background. So I think that probably struck a nerve with everybody. And it was play like those kids again. And again, he's also, the clever thing about that is he's bringing out the fact that some of these players as kids remember the Albiroja when they were good in 2010, right? Like Enciso probably, no, he was even too young, but maybe some of the other players will remember that, right? And it's like trying to almost go back to their childhood, but when Paraguay was such a good team. And so all of that comes together. And then is capped off by Julio Enciso, but I'll pass it on to you guys to talk us through that goal.
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, the goal from Junior Alonso, I think, was a really great cross from Diego Gomez. And like you said, I think Paraguay really kept on the attack. Rarely have you seen a team when you're down 2-0, it happens a few times, but like when you're down 2-0, but then the opposing team just continues to go on the attack, and Paraguay just kept doing that. And, I even for myself, like I generally think, and I thought to myself that we're gonna get something. Like I knew that if we get one more right before halftime, the whole game will have shifted. They did that, of course, right at the death. And then the second half, yeah, I mean, what more can you say? Because I think obviously Almiron did play that ball, but Julio Enciso, I mean, Ralph, you wrote a good article on him that is on his Substack that you could check it out after this. That is really demonstrative of Enciso. And we'll talk about him afterwards about like what it means for him and his career and whatnot. But it was a sensational goal. I mean, the fact that he goes and skips past all of those Colombian defenders, and he's done this so many times, and maybe some people thought, oh no, he's just gonna shoot it way off because he always done this. He's gonna, go and shoot it out of bounds, or it's gonna hit the post, or someone's gonna save it, or it's gonna be blocked. But the fact that he just continues to have this confidence to keep going, and then to shoot it from long distance, side netting past Camilo Vargas. I mean, what a fantastic moment it was. I mean, it showed that the two aspects I think of Paraguay in this one, Fede. One was, and going back to the Chile game, the fact that they can get the collective right, that they can be smart and tactical and, very much I guess punctual in the way of like the way they work, that they worked it out with the set piece with Almiron, Juan Cáceres, Enciso, Sanabria, Alderete. But then you get these individual talents, which you see from Tony Sanabria with the bicycle kick. Who on earth's gonna do that against Diego Martinez? And then someone like Enciso to do that, skip pass and then strike it past. It felt like it was the perfect balance of what Alfaro was able to get. To keep with the rituals, of course, with the good defense as well, which we didn't see in that game, but to use that, to use the collective, and then to use the individual brilliance if necessary, which Enciso did. And yeah, what a fantastic goal it was to see.
It was a remarkable goal, a memorable goal. We'll talk about that one for a while. Um, it's not the first one. It's not the first time he does it, so it's not a surprise from there. The quality has always been there for this kid, and that's why they called him the Jewel right away, right? Because he is a difference maker. He is a different kind of player, and that kind of makes him a ball hug. That kind of makes him a less tactical player, but we've seen him kind of mature in that sense. I even saw that against Chile already. I mean, the first balls that he was getting, he wasn't going just forward. I mean, he was trying to get in the circuit, trying to pass it along with the guys. He was trying to make friends with everybody. So I think Alfaro is getting to him. I think the European football is also getting to him. I think, everything that happened with Brighton and him not having as much time as he would have wanted there because of those kind of things, and going to Ipswich now, have kind of matured on him, and I think we're gonna see that player evolve. I think we're gonna see that player grow now, and these goals just make it even more real for him. And he is showing not only to the world, but maybe even to himself, I can be this player. I can be the player that everybody is waiting for me to be. So to be the star of this team that's doing so well right now, it has to feel amazing for a guy like Julio Enciso. And you can see him, how he was happy, how he was doing the little dance, that he had it ready, that he knew that he was going to score in this game and he was going to give it up there for his girlfriend. I mean, he had it all set up. And those guys are only the guys that can make the difference. And Julio has always been one of my favorite players ever since he started playing in the Paraguayan league. And I'm loving what he's bringing to this national team. And Alfaro's just giving him that freedom, Ralph, the freedom that they don't give him in Europe, but he has it on this national team. And look what he did. One of the best goals that I've seen in this qualifiers.
That's the key point, the freedom that he got here and the trust Alfaro has put in him. And again, I think the sacrifices that players around him will make, but that's because they know how good he is. I mean, no, I don't think any player, and you have Luis Diaz on that pitch, I don't think any player could have scored that goal the way he did. I mean, it's the fact that he takes it away from the three players. Carlos Cuesta slide tackles in, and because he shows him the ball, but then he's already touched it away from him. He scores. By the way, by the time he finishes scoring, he's on his backside because of like, the stretch to do it. I mean, it's an incredible goal. I loved it. I've been watching it for the last few days on repeat, like I'm sure you guys have. But I think the freedom is such a key point because why has he not scored in 2 years in the Premier League? It's because it's very different. It's a very different kind of game. And the best thing about him, I think, but it's also maybe his biggest weakness, is his single-mindedness and his confidence. I can't remember who it is, but there's a basketball player I remember listening to once about how they never think about the shot they missed and they just keep going for three pointers, right? And so it's the same thing. He had missed three similar chances already at that point, not even got on target, right? Over the bar. If you watch the angle from behind the goal, which is the best angle, watch Fabian Balbuena, who, let's be honest, I don't think they get along great because we saw it in the Copa America. And he he's like just looking kind of but ready to defend because he's almost thinking, oh, the ball's coming back to me, the ball's coming back to me. And as people are going away to celebrate, then Balbuena kind of goes like a bit after because it's almost like he can't believe, oh, this time it's actually gone in because he's seen him miss so much. So I mean, it's just such a unique talent. There's not really a way to describe it, and it is kind of genius because it's genius in the way that none of us would do that. If we missed those three shots, we weren't going to go for it again, not at that stage of the game. And he does it. And like you say, Fede, he's done it before. He did it against Bolivia. He did it against Israel in the Olympics. He's done it in the Premier League. And he'll keep trying and he'll keep doing it. And maybe my argument, as you will see in the Substack article, is, maybe it's not going to work in Europe for him. Or he'll either have to get it coached out of him and he won't be the same player, or he has to go maybe somewhere else, which would be a shame, right? Because I think we love these moments. I can take the missed shots to see him score goals like that every once in a while for Paraguay. But yeah, it's a brilliant goal. And by the way, that was another thing, talking about kids that haven't seen the Albirroja before, right? That's going to be, if you're like 8 or 9, 10, and you watch that, that's the goal you remember now for the rest of your life. It's an incredible moment.
There's going to be a lot of kids, when we qualify, of course, there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to grow up on the street and like, oh, I'm going to do a chilena like Tony Sanabria. Oh, I'm going to shoot it like Enciso. I'm going to win the ball back like Cubas. I'm going to save it like Gatito. I'm going to do all these. They're going to look at these moments and they're going to be like you said, Ralph, there's going to be players that are just going to feel like, no, Almiron's better than Haaland, or I'm gonna pick Enciso over Mbappe, or Lamine yeah, just pick anyone like Diego Gomez over Lamine Yamal, like all those kind of things, like Fede, these generation of kids, and you even see that in some of the videos, that I'm sure a lot of us have felt emotional, very nice of seeing, of like the kids at school wearing the Ave Roja, maybe them singing the national anthem, or the kids, one big one that I saw the other day of a kid that was celebrating the Enciso goal with his grandmother. I felt like that was so special to see. And there's going to be a lot of, I think for us as adults, who could be a bit cynical sometimes. And, I think that's the joy of adulthood at times. But you look at these kids and you're like, yeah, these are the ones that are going to be inspired. And, just like they were when they saw them play in 98, 2000, 2006, 2010, all throughout. It's going to be like that. And so it continues to shift. It's like the circle of life. But in this sense, without getting too emotional on the aspect of this thing, I think what we saw in Colombia was a great result. Obviously, 4 points again. Again, we continue to move on that point. And Ralph, you always said it. You win your home games and you tie your away games, you're going to the World Cup. And we've done that 4 times already. And the reality just keeps going on and on. And yeah, I can't wait for June, man. It's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be really fun to see.
The formula just keeps on working, just like you're saying, these kind of results. And Alfaro knows how to set it up. And this thing about Julio and Ciso and, all these players that are standing out now, obviously, and I was just thinking as you were talking, remembering what happened during this last World Cup. I mean, everybody had the Messi shirt on here in Paraguay, and yeah, it was a beautiful thing to see, everybody rooting for Messi, but you were thinking in the background, it should be us. We should be there. Everybody should be with their Albirroja on. And it's been beautiful to see that also before all of these games. During the game, the whole country stopped just to watch it in front of the TV. All these things that everybody's going through, all these emotions, just like you were saying, Roberto, it's just great. And just to put it on the pin on this Julio Ciso thing, I haven't seen a player that can make a difference like Julio can right now at this level since probably Cabañas, and we didn't have him in the World Cup, guys. So I'm thinking at everything that this team can do if we have Ramon Sosa at 100%, because I didn't see the best Ramon in these two games. I mean, we still have players that can contribute more, and it's just amazing to see as the qualifiers are coming to an end. This team is still peaking, and it has so much still that it can build on.
Yeah, no, totally. And I really want to close it on one more question because, I think heading into June, you feel like what more can this team do? They're eight unbeaten. They've won their four home games. They tied their four away games. I mean, I guess my question to you, and I'll answer first. What do you want to see from this Paraguay team? Obviously, coming up with the games in Uruguay and against Uruguay and then in Brazil, because I feel like for me, they got to close the job. They got to finish it. Like, ultimately continue to finish doing what they did. And, obviously as someone that is a bit selfish, I want to see obviously not always win 1-0, not always suffer these games. I think I'd rather win convincingly. That's not always going to happen. And I think World Cup time, and we have to analyze some of the opponents that we have to play in from the rest of the world where, I'm sure people are really going to keep their eye on Paraguay because they're going to see these results. And I think they are. I'm sure you guys are seeing it, or you're speaking to people from abroad. They're seeing Paraguay. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Argentina, they're going to be good. Brazil, they've been on a really roller coaster ride. Uruguay have kind of fallen off a bit. Colombia, obviously, too. Ecuador, right there, too. But they're going to look in Paraguay and be like, whoa, wait a minute, guys. We need to keep an eye out. We can't mess around with them. I'm not saying that they're going to be good enough to beat all these teams, although maybe Ralph has something to say about how we can fare out against the rest of the world. But yeah, just, what do you want to see from this Paraguay team to improve and finish their job that that in June they can secure their qualification spot after 16 years? I'll go to Ralph first.
Well, in June, I would be happy to see two draws, honestly. I mean, because I think that will get us there. Because remember, now we're tied on points with Uruguay and Brazil, our two opponents. So honestly, I could see like if we tie those two games, then that's enough. Because I'm at that stage now where I just want some caution. What do I want to see overall? I mean, I think we started to see it against Colombia. We saw that we're able to be more attacking when we want to and try and go toe to toe. I think where Paraguay has always suffered in recent years has been trying to go to those games where you're really trying to do one-on-one battles. You're not gonna play like a low block and sit back. Like when we've really tried to take games a bit higher up the pitch, we've been torn apart. Like I saw it against even Peru in 2016, 2017. I mean, we've seen it against Uruguay, especially when Suarez was around. We had no chance against Brazil. I think the last time I remember Brazil came in when Neymar was in the team, and it was, we just could never really compete when the game got a higher tempo. And we started to see against Colombia that apart from those first 15 minutes where we struggled a bit, we are able to really do that and take those games to teams. And I think that's going to help us against bigger teams, because it's not going to be always 0-0 or sitting back against, England. They will break you down because there's every single team sits back against them. They're used to that. So I think being able to do that like we did against Colombia, that see some more of that.
I would actually, I want 4 points again. And I think, especially because of the teams that we're playing up against, it would be enough, right? Because we're going to face two teams that are on top of us as of right now in the standings. And Uruguay has not had a good combo. They've struggled with Bielsa. You've seen that they're kind of trying to turn around again the way that they're playing, going more to the defensive side of it again. I don't know what kind of clash down that can be in Defensores del Chaco, where we've been really strong. But if I got to pick which team to beat, I would say I'd rather beat this Brazilian team that looks so weak, that they're having so many problems. You don't know who's going to coach them in the next combo because of what Doriba just went through against Argentina. We already beat them once. So I would love to just stomp on them right now and go through these two teams like we've been going through pretty much every team lately, and keep on building a good team, Roberto. Keep on playing with the same players. Hopefully nobody gets injured and we have everybody back, just like we had in these last couple of games. And I'm looking forward to that, just keep on riding this Alfaro wave.
Got to keep riding the wave, and then maybe the rest of the world will join that wave, and maybe they fall off. Who knows? But that's a further discussion. That people are already doing their draws, they're getting their visas ready. That's all gonna come. We'll cross that bridge when we have to. But no, I agree. I think this Paraguay team has the capability of challenging anyone in South America, and they've kind of done that. I think the next step, of course, is what they do against the rest of the world, and I think that's going to be really important to see what they can do. But yeah, it's another impressive window, and like you said, Ralph, they just need to finish the job, just be there. I'd love to get 2 wins. I don't know if that's possible. We'll talk about that later in June when we get through it. But yeah, it's been a really positive sign. It's really happy to see Paraguay do so well. And as Paraguay continue to ride this wave in the national team, we have to talk about what's going on with Paraguay in the club game, because we also saw that week of the Chile game, or at least the first week of the international break. We saw the draw of the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana. I'm gonna go to the Sudamericana first because that's the more kind of interesting take that we have. So we have a couple of teams in there too, exactly, that will be participating in the Copa Sudamericana. One group is with Group A with Guarani. They will be taking out Independiente of Argentina, Nacional Potosí of Bolivia, and Boston River of Uruguay. And in Group D, we have Sportivo Luqueño in the group with Grêmio Brazil, Godoy Cruz of Argentina, and Atlético Grau of Peru. I mean, from the get-go, guys, I think for both these two Paraguayan teams, it looks incredibly difficult. I'll go to Ralph on this one first. I think it would be a bit much. Maybe Guarani can do something and get out of it. I think they have the capability of going, as in the second place in the knockout round playoffs. But I think for Sportivo Luqueño, as you as a sympathizer for Luqueño, given your past experience living there, Ralph, I think it might be a bit too much for them.
Yeah, it's a difficult draw for Luqueño when you get a Brazilian and an Argentinian team together, right? I think you always want to try and avoid that. And so we'll see what they can do. I mean, with Luqueño, I think getting to the group stage was important. It's important financially, but they've also got issues in the domestic league that they're still not really finding great form. So we'll see what they can do and go in maybe without too much expectation. But then remember Emiliano last year, like no one was expecting much from them, and they picked up some great results. And then on the other side for Guarani, I actually think they have a better chance, like you say, because this is set up like the Europa League, so the teams that finish second go into an extra knockout round, whereas the teams that go first basically have a bye in that first knockout round. And so Independiente is going to be a big test, but you look at the other games, Potosí is at altitude, which of course could be complicated. But otherwise, I mean, I think it could be something where they target that second place based on what Potosí do at home, right? That's always going to be the difficulty. But I think it's exciting to see both of them back. For Guarani especially, I think it'll be interesting now. They dropped off a little bit in the league, so I don't think they're really chasing the Apertura, but they've got these very good players with experience that could go out and maybe get a few good results to Chiquiase's team.
Yeah, I remember Guarani ended up picking up even Juan Patiño, right, who has so much experience that he's always there on the bench waiting for an opportunity. They have a lot of players, but on the rotation, they haven't done that well. I mean, I've always said it, when they don't have Willie, when they don't have Fair, who's their main striker, this team struggles, and I don't think they're gonna have it easy. I don't think they got ready for the international competition this year, and they're gonna have it really hard, especially if they don't get results against Independiente and against Nacional de Potosí. I don't see them going through, to be honest. I'm gonna be rooting for Sportivo Luqueño probably to be the big surprise in their group, especially because of the way they start off their calendar, right? I mean, against the big team, against Gremio. So if you get a good result there, it could give you that motivation. They're not in it in the Apertura, so maybe this can be their world during this first couple of months of the year. Their coach managed in the Brazilian league before, so he knows what Gremio is about. I'm hoping that they're ready for this kind of thing, and they have a lot of experience also on that team. I know it's Aguilar's probably last big tournament. He's the big captain there, so they're gonna go all out for him too. I love what I saw from Sportivo Luqueño getting into the group phase. So I'm gonna stick to that. I think they have players that can make the difference in certain games, that love to show up, and I'm gonna be rooting for Sportivo Luqueño. I think they got better chances than what I need, even though most people think the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be really tough for both of them, but they have a chance. They definitely have a chance. As we look into the Copa Libertadores draw that also happened later that night, it was three Paraguayan teams, Olimpia, Libertad, and Cerro Porteño. We'll go into the order of kind of the way that the group has been set up. In Group D with Libertad, they will be with São Paulo, Brazil, Talleres of Argentina, and Alianza Lima, Peru. Very difficult group. We look at Palmeiras in Group G with Bolivar, Sportivo Cristal, and Cerro Porteño of Paraguay. And in Group H, to cap it off, Olympia's in the group with Peñarol of Uruguay, Vélez Sarsfield of Argentina, and San Antonio Bulo Bulo of Bolivia. I mean, from the get-go, guys, we got to talk about the kind of the elephant in the room. It's in Group G, Cerro Porteño taking on Palmeiras. Again, I mean, there's been so much controversy, Ralph, in all of this that we've seen so far, ever since the incident in the U20 with Luigi and the sort of the racist comments. It felt like it hasn't gone away. It was even, as Alejandro Dominguez even was saying that, like, using a reference of saying that, oh, Brazilian teams, they can't play in them not being in the Copa Libertadores would be the same thing as Cheetah without Tarzan. So it just, again, like all these references, it just felt like, flaming the Flyers even more. And yeah, I mean, this was probably the worst case scenario. I think the people at Conmebol were hoping that wasn't going to be the case, but something must have happened, I guess, and Cedro have to go to Palmeiras and they have to come here as well. So I don't expect that to be, I mean, obviously we hope that it goes off safe and sound, but I don't think that's gonna happen. It's already difficult as it is as a group, with who they have to face. They have to go obviously to Bolivia in the altitude to take on them, and then also the fact that they have to take on Sporting Cristal in Peru. So, they're not traveling too far, but it's still a very difficult group. Nevertheless, I think it's still an accessible one for them.
Well, I think it's a tough group. It's a very tough group for Cerro because of, I mean, Palmeiras are pretty much one of the best teams in the continent, right? And then Bolívar, you have to go to altitude. Cristal maybe aren't as good as the Cristal a couple of years ago. I think they've lost some of those players. But it's still not that easy. But the Cerro Palmeiras is the talking point, like you said. And if anybody wants proof that these draws are not fixed, then this is proof. This is not, if Conmebol could fix the draw, they would have avoided this, because it's a big issue at the moment. During the Copa Libertadores, like the ceremony, the vice president of Palmeiras basically confronted Cerro's president, saying they haven't done enough, they haven't taken it seriously in terms of the racist incident. Palmeiras' president, she had already said that, hey, why don't we just go and play in CONCACAF if people aren't going to take racism seriously? And that's all before Alejandro Dominguez came out with his comment. Then yesterday, Dominguez, he's basically had to backtrack, and he set up this whole, racism task force that unfortunately I do not think is going to do much. That seems more for show, but he's there with Ronaldo and, with ex-players and saying he's going to do something. But now everybody's kind of waiting for this almost like tinderbox of what's going to happen in La Hoya when Palmeiras go there. And Cerro, unfortunately, the way I'm seeing the reaction from Cerro fans is, I cannot see that this is going to go off smoothly. It's almost become like the grito in Mexico, where like the fans just do it now because it almost there's like an anti-establishment thing, not actually thinking about the consequences of their actions. So it's got into what I think is a terrible situation from this one incident, which wasn't dealt with very well at the beginning in a small tournament, the under-20s, and now we're seeing it on the biggest stage. So let's see what happens with that. But it's become a very big issue, to the fact that the presidents are the presidents of Cerro and Palmeiras and the president of Conmebol have all seemed to become involved. So it's that now, from a very small tournament and an isolated incident of one fan, is become this much bigger issue to deal with. And in terms of on the pitch, I mean, Palmeiras are a much better team, even though I think they lost last night, right? The Paulistao, but they're still one of the best teams, and they're gonna make it very difficult for Cerro in both matches.
They're always a strong team in Libertadores. You're just going to expect that on both games, that you're going to have to go against them. Settle's in a good situation, I think, after going through the first stages, building up an interesting team. I would even say, I think Diego Martinez has has now got himself together. He knows what he has. He has rotated so many and used so many players in the games that he has so far. So I'm looking forward to what Cerro Porteño can actually do in this group stage. You know, from the political side of it, also Ralph mentioned Cerro Porteño's president. He announced this week, he made it official that he's not going to run again for presidency, and that kind of takes some pressure also, I believe, from the squad. You know, the atmosphere hasn't been what we talked about that in other episodes in certain games. They've lost a lot of important games in the Apertura. Now their mindset is only going to be in Libertadores, and I'm looking forward to that. To talking about football, because I'm with Ralph on the Comebol thing. I don't think there's going to be much coming out of that, those reunions and what they're trying to do. Comebol cannot change the laws in the country. They cannot sanction individuals unless the police is with them. So they're going to have a hard time, you know, going with this thing. I want to see just exactly what they're going to do. Usually or lately, Comebol, all they're doing is just taking money away from the clubs, right? Giving you a big sanction, giving you a huge fine, and I'm just taking money away from you. That's pretty much what's been going on lately. As for the games, I think Olimpia is the one that really had the best draw, guys, and I'm really looking to what Libertad can do in their group. I think they can even go for that first spot, to be honest.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I think Olympia, I feel like they are it looks tricky in itself, but I feel like, what they've done and the start that they've had in the league, I think allows them to feel confident enough. I think Vélez and Peñarol are very much tough opponents that I don't know what to expect from San Antonio Bulu Bulu. That's a wild card in itself. So I think for Olympia, you could feel a bit more positive. For Libertad, I don't know. I think Talleres are very good in what they've done. They've demonstrated that over the last few months. São Paulo are a really tough team. Alianza Lima just eliminated Boca Juniors. So I don't know. I feel like Fede, there's kind of this yin and yang in a way, if that makes sense. This is just how I feel. I don't know how you feel, but I don't know. Just feels different for both sakes of confidence wise.
The thing is that Libertad is the best team in the Paraguayan league. So if they take that team and you put it in the international stage, you put it in Libertadores, I'm expecting for this team to go for the first spot. Out of the three teams, they are the strongest Paraguayan team going forward and starting this group stage. As for Olimpia, they have a packed full of injury players right now, and they lost Derlis Gonzalez, who was starting probably as their center forward lately. They don't have Benedetto like they wanted. He's barely played. He hasn't scored a single goal, and he was the big signing, right, going into this Libertadores. So you don't know what's going to happen with this Olimpia side as of right now, and Libertad is healthy. They are finding options. They have so many young players, and they're going to use them, I believe, also in this Libertadores, because that's also been kind of the mindset from the club, right? Let's promote the young guys. So I'm expecting for them to have a big impact in this Libertadores, not like other Libertadores that we've seen Libertad kind of struggle with a lot of old players. I think this new coach, Patito Quino, is going forward with the young players, with the academy that has worked really well. There's so many good players like you, Ralph.
This is the big test for Aquino, I think, right? Because Libertad always have a good team, like you were mentioning, but they've always slipped up, and it was the same under Garnero. It happened with Galliano, and now it's Aquino's turn. And like you said, it sounds like he's because Galliano did something interesting where he used Roque Santa Cruz, if I'm right. Yeah. He was using Roque in Libertadores and Tacuara in the league, right, as he rotated them. But like you're saying, I think Aquino, having worked there, he's been involved in the club for so long. He was a player for years. He knows a lot of these kids coming through. He knows which ones to pick. He's just got Alexis Freites, who scored 2 goals in the last league, match day. Pedro Villalba's only 16. He's doing amazing things with the under-17s already, and he's already debuted. So he's got all these kind of players that he can start to bring in now that Ruben Lescano has already been sold. And so like you were saying, it's become also a strategy of Libertad, because they've made over $40 million through player sales recently. And so they're looking at the Copa Libertadores as the moments where you get some of these players. Alianza Lima, I remember they lost at home. One of the few teams that lose at home to Alianza Lima. It was 2 years ago. But I also remember that is one of those games where they were giving debuts to younger players. So, I mean, we'll see. I think for Libertad, it is a harder group, but then they're in a much better position than Olimpia, especially with the injuries. And with Olimpia, yeah, losing Derlis Gonzalez is just, I think it was just such a big blow to them because no one else has really made the difference. Benedetto, also Luca Prato. I mean, they, Rodney Redes has been in the national team. Maybe he comes back a bit refreshed because he hasn't he's traveled, but he hasn't had to play. But you're kind of thinking they're missing something that Derlis was bringing them, and for these big games, it could be very difficult.
Will be very difficult indeed. It's going to be really interesting to see what these games coming up very soon. Obviously it's going to be coming up very much in the first week of April, so we got those games coming up, and so I think it's going to be an interesting test. And starting off here, Libertad have to go to Alianza Lima, like you said. Cerro will have to host Bolivar, and Olimpia go to Bolivia to Cochabamba to take on San Antonio Bolo Bolo. So we'll keep an eye on that and talk about what's been going on. Same thing for the Sudamericana when it comes about. Let's switch gears to the last segment and go back to the U17. I want to go to Ralph on this one first. I want to shout out Florencia Cáceres, who I had the fortune of meeting up in Paraguay, actually, on the week that I traveled. She was there on international duty, played against Uruguay, won both games, actually, for the U17 women's team, so they did well. Congrats to them. But also, Ralph, we also saw the U17 men's team play well in the tournament. They started off in the championship over there in Colombia, a 5-0 win with Pedro Yala kind of stealing the headlines. And in a way, with the way that this format is, so the way that this format works is you're going to have obviously two groups of five. The top two go to like this final four, but they secure qualification actually to the World Cup. But at the end of the day, you're going to see 7 teams qualify for this World Cup, similar to what we see with in the regular CONMEBOL qualifiers for the 26 World Cup. So, it felt like for Paraguay's case, they can't fail. They can't fail in the sense. I mean, yeah, obviously a long way to go. They need to go, but you feel like qualification. It feels as if though they could feel like they're in a good spot, and there's gonna be so many opportunities for them to do it. If they fail, then okay, so they'll do it in the 5th and 8th place playoff, or they could do it in the 7th place playoff. Like Paraguay would have to do really, really bad to not qualify for this World Cup.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think that's even in question, to be honest, because they're coming in. Remember, in November, this same group of players won the Sudamericana, which was it was under 15s, but they were by then under 16s because the whole thing had been delayed. And it's the same, it's pretty much the same group of players. It's the same coach, Mariano Ublesic, who played for many years from Argentina, but played for many years in Cerro and in Paraguay. The whole kind of, for me, the whole kind of way this is set up now with the expanded under 17s World Cup is, yeah, this is more almost like warm-up games for the World Cup. I know that almost sounds very arrogant, but if you win the whole tournament, the idea that you would somehow come 8th just a few months later would be very strange. So I'm looking forward to Paraguay having some good games, seeing how they do it in the big matches. Let's say if they face Argentina, Brazil, which I'm sure we're going to see those games. Also against Colombia, the hosts. But it's more about starting to see some of these players how they develop. So Pedro Villalba, we already mentioned. You have Carlos Franco, the number 10 from Cerro, who's interesting, and then you have De Carvalho, who scored the first goal yesterday. I mean, a lot of these players you've heard about from doing well in the Sudamericana last time, and they haven't made most of them haven't made the leap yet, right, to senior football, except I think Pedro Villalba is the only one that has made his debut in senior football. So now you're starting to see these games and then think, okay, will some of them get a few games at the end of the Apertura when teams have nothing to play for us? They'll be coming back from here before heading off to Qatar for the World Cup. But it was a really good start. It was exactly what they needed, I think, to prove that the team that won the tournament in November is still on that kind of level and hasn't really let up at all.
Yeah, I've seen most of the process, from most of these guys going through the under 15th and now making it to the under 17th. And you're just hoping for this team to just evolve and keep on growing. I mean, it was an amazing first result. Let's hope that they can carry this momentum during the whole competition. It's not going to be easy, though, because there are big teams. And I don't know. I have huge expectations, really, because lately we have done very well with all of the national teams. So we're aiming high, Roberto. And this guy, this team, this squad, the last practice that they had before going to Colombia was with the senior national team. They had the opportunity to be the sparrings there, and they were kicking it with the best guys. So I think they've done the long process. They've gotten ready. They played a whole bunch of friendlies. So everything has been done the correct way from the player selection also. I think Olympia is the one that chips in the most players in the starting team in the first game that we saw. But yeah, just like Raf was mentioning, Pedro Villalba, and I think Derlis Almada, who just had his first game a couple of games ago with Libertad, they are the only ones that have experience in first division. So it could be that leaping point for most of these guys when they head back to their clubs. Maybe they will have more game time because their coaches might have to look into them because they can't stand out in a big stage like this one.
Yeah, they would have to be really bad to not make it here, but you'll have to wait and see what happens as we continue on this great coverage of Paraguayan football as a whole on Guarani Vision as we close out another great episode. Obviously, doing well with Paraguay in the qualification spots for the 2026 World Cup. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.